Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we'll be talking about how you can backup and restore your stateful applications running on VMware Tanzu using Portworx PXBackup. For this demo, we already have a 5-node worker and 3-node control plane TKGS cluster running Portworx and PXBackup, and we have a FlashBlade system that's configured as our S3 compatible backup repository to store our backup snapshots. Let's log into a Linux VM that has access to our TKG cluster. We'll do kubectl get nodes to make sure everything looks good. And then we'll also do a kubectl get pods kube system to look at all the Portworx components. We'll exec into one of the Portworx pods to look at the status of our Portworx storage cluster. As you can see, we have a 5-node Portworx storage cluster with a total capacity of 750 gigs. We'll also do get pods on the PXBackup namespace to look at the status of all the pods for PXBackup. Since everything looks good, we'll go ahead with an application deployment. For this demo, we are choosing a simple WordPress app with a MySQL backend. We'll deploy it in the WordPress namespace. So let's do a kubectl apply. And then we can do a kubectl get all for that namespace and look at all the different components that Kubernetes is deploying for our application. Let's navigate to the Octant UI and navigate to the WordPress namespace to look at all the different Kubernetes components for our stateful app. We have a couple of deployments, replica sets and pods. Let's deep dive into the WordPress deployment. As you can see, it has one pod. It gives us additional details around the template. If we click on the resource viewer, we can see the entire topology of our application. You can see we have our WordPress that's relying on our MySQL backend and the secret that is deployed in the same namespace. So we have all of these different components that make up one stateful application. Now, let's go and fetch the service interface or the IP to access the WordPress site. Since we have configured service type as load balancer, we don't need to go through any node port or any port forwarding. We'll set up the simple WordPress site, give it a title for the site, specify a username, password, and an email address. And then we'll make log into the site and make a few changes, so that we generate some data as part of our WordPress instance, so that when we back up and then restore it, we can verify that all of those changes are still intact. So we'll change the header. This is just a simple site, so PXBackup Tanzu, providing data protection solutions for Tanzu. We'll add a new blog post as well, just describing what we are doing here. So how we can leverage PXBackup to provide data protection solution for VMware Tanzu. And now, once the post is ready to go, we'll go to that URL, make sure that it's published and available. Now let's navigate to our PXBackup UI. Here, let's look at a few settings that have been pre-configured for this demo. So we have our cloud account and backup location. This is S3 compatible FlashBlade system. You can use anything else. You can even use AWS S3, Azure Blob Storage, or any other S3 compatible storage to be used as your backup repo. We already have one schedule policy called daily 9. You can create additional schedule policies that can be leveraged for different backup jobs. So let's create one for weekly. So every Saturday at 9 p.m., basically a backup snapshot is triggered. You can specify how many snapshots you want to retain and when you want incremental. Let's create another one for monthly. So again, we'll name it specifically, instead of 31, let's do 30, just to make sure that it gets triggered on almost all months. Okay, and we'll do this for 8 p.m. So now we have 2 additional schedule policies that can be leveraged for our backup jobs. Next thing is backup rules. So these are really important when you want to take application consistent backups, not just crash consistent. So if you're dealing with stateful and distributed databases like Cassandra or Elasticsearch or PostgreSQL, all of those databases need some pre and post backup rules to ensure application consistency. You can use this UI and PXBackup to basically define those and map those to your backup jobs when you create those. So This is a simple example one. We are just doing an echo hello world whenever. So basically when we assign this to a backup job, whenever it's triggered, it will echo something and same for the post backup. Now let's go ahead and protect the WordPress application. So we'll select the WordPress namespace. One of the things I really like about PXBackup is you can select the namespace and create a backup job for all the objects that exist inside the namespace, or you can select individual Kubernetes objects. So you might want to protect your data every hour, but then the objects can only only need to be protected once a day because you generate more data, but the Kubernetes objects are remain pretty stable. So you can configure those and customize your backup schedules and policies. Let's create a new backup policy. We'll name it a WordPress daily. Select our backup repo. Select a schedule. So we want this to be triggered on a daily basis. We can select the pre and post backup rule. Again, we are not using it for this particular WordPress application, but this is where you can select those. And now, since we put it on a schedule, it shows up under the schedules tab and it is set to be triggered at 9 p.m. But for the demo, let's do one that gets triggered right away. Let's do an on-demand backup job. So we'll name it WordPress on demand, select the same backup repo. Let's select now, and then look at all the different Kubernetes objects that will be protected. So deployments, persistent volumes, claims, secrets, and services. Now the backup job is officially triggered. You can monitor the progress from the backups tab inside the PXBackup UI. It takes a few seconds to a minute based on the amount of data that you have. This is a pretty lightweight application, so shouldn't be long. As you can see, it says it's still in progress. Since this is the first time, it's capturing everything. One of the things that we have done as part of this demo is just sped up the whole operation. So now we are ready to go. The backup succeeded, and now we have a point in time that we can restore to if there is an accidental deletion or corruption for our WordPress site. So let's make that happen, right? Let's navigate back to our CLI interface. And similar to how we applied all the different YAML files, we'll do a deletion. So let's make sure everything exists. Then we'll do a kubectl delete for the folder itself in the WordPress namespace, and it basically deletes all the different objects that were created. So at this point, we don't have a WordPress site that we can navigate to. So now we are ready to perform the restore operations, just making sure that everything did get deleted. So if we do a get all, you don't see any resources. Let's navigate to the PXBackup UI and restore our WordPress site. So we'll select the on-demand backup job that we just created. We'll select restore, we'll give it a name, and then you can either restore it to the same cluster, or if your entire cluster went down, you can restore it to a different cluster as well. You can decide whether you want to restore it in the same namespace, a different namespace, whether you want to rewrite or replace existing resources. All of those different scenarios are supported. We'll do a simple restore, and we'll come back to the CLI and monitor or watch the get pods command. So you can see that already a couple of pods are being generated, and now they are in the running state. So that means our application is back online. Let's do a get service for the WordPress namespace and fetch the external IP. Navigate to the browser interface, verify that the restore succeeded. So you can see that how much data was transmitted, what were the resources that were restored. If it was to a different cluster and namespace, you can see all the details there as well. Let's navigate to the IP and look at our WordPress app. As you can see, the title and the subtitle looks great. Our blog post that we had generated for PXBackup for VMware Tanzu is there as well. So as you can see, the restore was successful. Let's go back to Octant and also make sure that all the resources that were originally part of our application still exist. So let's navigate to the resource viewer tab. And as you can see, we have a similar hierarchical diagram where you will see all the deployments, namespace, pods, services, secrets that were associated with our WordPress application are back to the state where it should be. Let's also navigate to the config and storage tab, where we look at the persistent volume claims. Again, both of these volumes were restored successfully. and everything looks green. Navigating back to our PXBackup UI, similar to how we can monitor all the different backup operations, we can also go to the cluster and monitor all the restores. So it maintains a list of all the restore operations that have been performed for your cluster, regardless of the application. That's it for this demo. Thanks for watching.